Hello and welcome to the Michael Mamas Show, Ancient Secrets Revealed. I'm your host, Michael Mamas, and we're coming to you from Mt Soma, home of the Sri Sameshwara Temple in the mountains of western North Carolina. So we just need to talk today about what's going on in the world. And I think certainly in the context of, the big picture, the phase transition really, because it is remarkable. And well, first, I think I'm going to just go straight at the most questionable part of it, and that is, there's the whole political thing and how so many people hate Trump, and there's so much polarization. And I think what it can do, if we're not careful, is it can cloud our vision of what's going on. You okay, Scotty? You're making a bunch of.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Okay, of what's going on. Um, independently of the politics. That's hard to do, especially if you're a big, huge fan of Trump, or if you can't stand Trump. And as is characteristic of, even the Jyotish, the astrology these days, such polarizations are in the works. So let's try to take a step back and just try to get a perspective, a balanced perspective. I guess step one. There are a lot of things we want to get into here today, but with respect to that, because now I think even good things or even bad things can be spun in a way that we just use to reinforce our preconceived notions of what we think of the political situation. And so it makes things difficult, and everything can be argued either way. But I think there's something like, for example, that just the economy is booming. I mean, it is, and things are taking off. And people might say, well, if the U.S. is prospering with tariffs, then they're just hurting other countries and blah, blah, blah. So see, even that can be argued the other way. The tariffs ultimately will create a balanced relationship internationally, which will help all countries. And by the implementation of tariffs to, well, geez, did you see, Scotty, did you see what Trump is doing? He gave Russia 50 days to stop the war in Ukraine. Otherwise, he's going to put a 100% tariff on China, India, because those countries have really been keeping Russia afloat because Russia's been selling oil to them very inexpensively to get money to keep the war going. So he said, stop the war, we're going to do that. It's hugely manipulative, but I would think powerfully effective,
Yeah.
So in the light of political situations, I think it's really hard for people, all of us, to really get a balanced perspective on what's really going on because our political biases kick in. And again, we can say, oh, that's great what he's doing with tariffs, will stop the war. Another person would say, oh, that's horrible what he's doing with tariffs, how manipulative. And of course, basic economics, if all the countries are positively intended and all tariffs are not a good thing. It just you okay there, Scotty?
Yep, I'm here.
Because I'm hearing a lot of noise.
Yeah, I'm in a car.
Oh, all right. All right. Anyway, suffice that to say, let's move on. And all I would ask you to do is, everybody, is make your best attempt to, when we look at what's going on economically or in business and stuff, to try to keep the politics out of it and try to get an idea of the big picture and what's really going on there. And that's, I think, the best we can do with that whole thing. Certainly, the economy in the U.S. is booming. I mean, there's no question about it. But how does that affect the rest of the world? Anyway, you decide for yourselves. But now there are so many things going on that are incredible. Like, Scotty, the aluminum ion batteries. You know, the big thing with Teslas and why I would have never even considered getting a Tesla is because the lithium ion batteries, they tend to catch on fire. There have been a lot of things, and they do try to, I think, hide it and stuff, but it's just, it's too risky. You know, people's houses are burning down. Insurance companies aren't insuring houses if people park their Teslas in the garage. But aluminum ion batteries completely do away with that. And they hold charges like forever, and they're powerful, and they could be used, I don't know, potentially to even power airplanes, I think. That's huge. That's incredible. I mean, maybe now we've come on to something where, yeah, battery operated everything could work. And I don't know much about this, but I also heard it's not just Tesla with the aluminum ion batteries, but evidently Toyota. Do you know anything about this, Scotty? Toyota is coming out with a battery that's supposed to perhaps even one up what Tesla is doing. You know anything about that, Scott?
No, but I know there was a lot of announcements about different Toyota, Honda, all these with even different technologies than just electricity too that they're working on. So
yeah, and see, that's great, Scotty, and it's like that. But it's across the board. Flying cars, they're talking about. And again, trying to keep out of the politics. It does seem to be a safer world because Iran was talking about dropping a nuke on Israel. And if you like the way it was done or not, at least they don't have the technology to do it anymore. And that's got to be a good thing, doesn't it? Technological. Oh, and then did you see Tesla is coming out with a little laptop, kind of like an iPad sort of thing, $200, and it works with Starlink. So wherever you are, you have connection all over the world. Yeah, and it's only $200, and I mean it's going to have a profound effect on Amazon, or I mean Samsung and Apple, and it's going to be huge. All of this is going to be huge. So all these things are signs of an incredible phase transition that's coming to the world. If just the things we mentioned here come through and actually happen, it's going to be a completely different world, and a world vastly for the better. Takes a very short amount of time, for example, to charge these aluminum ion batteries. I mean, we're talking about such a dramatic reduction in the cost of power and energy for the whole world. Kind of like along the lines of what Tesla was talking about doing, you know, with energy that gets transmitted through the air, you know. Incredible. Now, there's a principle. It's called the Meissner effect in physics, and it has to do with coherence. And to try to say it, I don't know, the idea is that if you have an integrated system, it becomes incredibly powerful, incredibly invincible. And the example I use in my lectures a lot is just like with the pickle jar. and you got the plastic ring that goes around the lid. And boy, you just can't get that plastic ring off. It's almost impossible to break. It has an incredible coherence, Meissner effect, you know. But now there's a principle there that one little crack in the coherence and the whole thing becomes incredibly weakened. That's why if you take a knife or scissors or something and just put a little nick anywhere in the plastic ring, it just peels right off, comes right off. And so right now in this time of phase transition from huge chaos into this incredibly coherent state where everything reinforces everything else and it all becomes mutually supportive and prosperous and abundant. We're still dealing with the idea of this old type thinking that confrontation is right. And it goes back to people's childhood issues with authority figure, not liking to be told what to do, not willing to admit if you've made a mistake, you know, really childish kind of behavior, but epidemic. But where it needs to go, where it is going, where it will go in this phase transition is a time where every nation, every individual, we're mutually supportive. We stop looking at everything like the glass is half empty and start looking at it like it's half full. And if we could just do that as a species, the whole thing would just prosper. The whole world would prosper. So it's a matter of bringing that about and letting go of old paradigms. And like Putin, you know, with the whole war in Ukraine, I think it's gotten to the point now for him where it's more of an ego thing, you know. I mean, 1 million people have died or whatever they say. He doesn't want to let it go. And so we'll see what happens. But with the pressure of the tariffs and the tariff threat within 50 days, something's going to happen. And I think he's going to have to let it go, you know. So all that is going on. There's a principle, I think it's in the Upanishads, where it talks about Purusha. Purusha is like the embodiment of the absolute, of the transcendent. And it says, it's a beautiful verse. It says, Purusha has something like 1,000 eyes, 1,000 arms, 1,000 legs, but one brain. And that's a very interesting, it's a very interesting principle. This idea that there needs to be one brain. And what do we mean by that? We mean everything coalesces to a point where there's a leader. And the coherence and intelligence of that leader determines the course that the whole group consciousness follows. And it goes both ways. If the coherence of the group is poor, then it gives rise to poor leaders. It's the coherence, and a lot of this is just karmic waves, you know, it's not like a linear function, but it just goes up and down. But we're coming into a time now, I think, where our leaders are going to cease to be so invested in pettiness, ego, bias, negativity, and start more and more fully embodying the infinite harmony inherent in the nature of existence. And that will come to one brain, you know. It was said that, you know, democracy is what happens when there's nobody around that's fit to lead. Can you imagine a time when the leaders we find in power are living in harmony with natural law, are living in harmony with nature, free of bias, free of ego, free of negativity? And that's what's coming. That's what's coming. And then as the group consciousness unifies, it becomes invincible. Even with, just as an example, with Mount Soma, I run Mount Soma. I'm the director. I'm in charge, and so I do my best to make wise decisions. And that doesn't, see, the thing is about making wise decisions. A good leader isn't some self-righteous individual that has all the answers, but it's an individual that will observe based on what has been observed, what knowledge they have, what knowledge they gather from people in the organization. They make a decision. And that's the direction the group coherence supports. But a wise leader also is open to new information, is seeking out opinions of people in the organization to determine if there's a new tact, a new direction to go, a better direction to go. But those inputs, if they're based upon pettiness, negativity, childhood wounds, things like that, I think a wise leader is pretty quick to say, well, I'm not going with that direction. That doesn't make sense. That's not coming from the kind of place I want it to come from. And also people that understand and adhere to, however we proceed, it has to be based on the cultivation of harmony, integration, working together. Differences of opinions don't mean animosity, don't mean conflict. They mean a respectful and careful reflection of the situation, a pondering of the situation, a willingness to take in new information, a willingness to reflect on what was and how that could and certainly should have an influence on our decisions of what will be. And so, see, it all then has to resort back to fundamental principles, living in harmony with nature. We're coming out of a time when humanity, by and large, was electing or coming up with poor leaders. It's just a reflection of group consciousness. Because if the group consciousness is coherent, it's invincible, and it's living in harmony with nature. And therein, the rise of even a nasty dictator won't happen. Can't happen. It's invincible. These are principles of nature. It's Meissner effect, So there are plenty of signs. If you look at technological advancements, if you look at, the wars are ending, and I think soon the Ukraine thing is going to get resolved. Iran no longer has the nuclear capacity that it had. And if we really take a step back, though, we still see, it's like a sprout breaking through the earth. I mean, from the perspective of the crust of the earth, it might be, we're getting broken, we're getting cracked up. But really what's happening is a sprout is blossoming. And that's exactly what's happening right now during this phase transition. And Scotty, you're really the Jyotish expert in the group. And there's Jyotish right now that's indicative of tension, turmoil, chaos, whatever, and particularly for this day. So, Scotty, what can you tell us about that?
Well, I did it based on the chart of the U.S., and it just looks like it's a lot of what's happening in the world right now. A lot of turmoil, a lot of miscommunication, a lot of, just people.
What planets are involved?
Okay, so the first one is, the sun in Cancer, which is the sixth house from the moon in the U.S. chart. Emphasizes conflicts, health, national service, domestic challenges, disputes, focus on military increase, covert operations, those types of things.
All of that. That's sun in Cancer in the sixth.
Right.
In the U.S. chart. What about Mars? What's going on with Mars? I heard stuff's going on with Mars.
Well, there's also Mercury retrograde in Cancer as well. So there's going to be legal disputes, misunderstandings, policy policy announcements. Has that happened, lately?
Yeah, and technological communication interferences. I had trouble with my computer this morning.
Yeah.
Things like that.
And then Mars is conjunct in K2 with K2 in Virgo. And, it causes transformative events involving hidden enemies, financial upheavals, action, aggression, detachment, chaos, accidents, natural disasters, all those types of things. Because it's, and right now too, the nakshatra that is all in is a water nakshatra. So that's why, I don't know if you've seen, there's, Vegas, Texas.
Well, all over the place, there's storms and floods.
Yeah.
See, what's going to happen is this transition happens, is there will still be, the earth is a living, breathing entity. And so there's still going to be those things happening and this is hard for people to really grasp, I think, because it's so foreign the way we think. But those things will start to happen in areas where there aren't people. And if you can wrap your head around that and really think about that and come to appreciate the profundity of the power of group consciousness. That's a tough one for people. I know it is. But nevertheless, it's valid, and it's Vedic principle, it's just right there. Because, there have been a lot of and even with the Mexican border, and all of the undocumented aliens that are now creating all kinds of riots and turmoil and fighting ICE and ICE tries to deport murderers, rapists, whatever, and people are rising up against them. And it is interesting that from a Jyotish perspective, I've talked about how the southern entrance is death. And Mexico, being south of the U.S., all coming in through the southern entrance. I mean, there is a correlation there, isn't there? Yes, Scotty, it's incredible, everything that's going on is incredible. And it's so consistent with Vedic technology. See, Vedic knowledge is all expansive. It knows the big picture and looks at everything in the context of the big picture and the nature of consciousness and the role of the human species, particularly on our planet. And then the role of the global consciousness of the human species and its effect on the world situation, even the weather, everything. Anything more, Scotty?
Yep, I'm here. That was good.
Okay. All right. I think that's enough. My appeal to all of you in this podcast, today's podcast, is to take a step back and look at things in context of the bigger picture. Entertain the notion, the technology of the Veda, how the world functions in that larger context, and how all of this fits into that larger context. And see if there are areas where perhaps you would like to reshape your perspective on what's going on, even though it can be completely opposite of what perhaps you had been thinking. Wisdom is reflection. Wisdom is flexibility of consciousness. Wisdom is not a fixity of a narrow viewpoint, but an expansive opening to entertaining the possibility of different ways of viewing the same thing. And that difference makes all the difference. Okay. That's it for this week. And we'll talk with you again next week. Thanks.